Could this finally be a drone that matches it with the pro level options without breaking the bank? It's under 250 grams, so you can legally fly it almost anywhere, and it isn't likely to be banned in the United States. But is it actually any good? Last year I reviewed this guy's daddy, the Atom 1, at least that's what I'm calling it. I specifically asked for some upgrades, so did we get them? Well, sort of. Let's just dig in. This is the Atom 2. It's the latest one. Now if you're new here, my name is Ben Mack and I'm a professional photographer and I've been flying drones forever.
Most people probably won't look at the same type of features that I'm looking at.
I think most people are just going to tell you what type of features the drone comes with, but I'm actually going to review them. And I'll also tell you how to get the most out of this drone. Drones are super fun to fly, but if the image or the camera is no good, then I'm going to say your drone is also no good. And credit to Potensic because they've upgraded a ton of things on this drone, but I'm mostly interested in the biggest upgrade, which is the camera. But before we get to that, let's just take it for a spin.
So we're going to give this thing its first test flight. I know there's been a whole bunch of improvements.
But before you do anything, it's probably wise to update your firmware. It's super easy. As long as your phone has network and it's plugged into the remote, you can just follow the prompts and go from there. The drone will flash until it's complete, and it's a really simple process. And then once that's done, you're ready to take off. And they've added this really cool single swipe feature, which is great for single hand takeoff. I'm also going to have a look at how noisy this is. It says on the website that it's 40%.
Compass needs to be calibrated.
Okay, the compass needs to be...
Preparation.
Okay. A few things we need to sort out before we fly as well. So we've got to calibrate the drone, which is fine. Generally speaking, I think if the drone can go in a more bassier tone, it sounds quieter. It's that high-pitched buzzing bee sound that everyone hates. So it says on the website that it's 40% quieter than the previous version. I don't know what you think about that. I mean, it could be quieter, but to me it just sounds like any small drone. Doesn't sound terrible though. I think once you get about 10 or 15 meters away, you wouldn't even be able to hear that at all. Now, I didn't do a scientific test on it, so I can't definitively say. And to be honest with you, if it was 40% quieter, I think I would have recognized.
But one of the things that I'm most looking forward to testing is actually the new sensor. It's a whole bunch bigger than the previous, and to get a better image quality, usually a better sensor or larger sensor is going to get you there.
And for me, this is the most significant upgrade. So we want to know that the drone can actually take half decent looking images. So I'm going to throw a bunch of the camera specs side by side and we can have a quick look at some of the main differences which I think are huge improvements. And starting with that image sensor that we just spoke about, it's grown from 1/3 of an inch to 1/2 inch, which is something you probably don't want to tell your lady friends about. But in this instance, it's actually quite a significant upgrade. You'll also notice that the 12 megapixels from the Atom 1 has been improved to 48 megapixels. This is a little bit misleading because it still is a 12 megapixel sensor, but there is a little bit of sensor magic happening in the back end, which actually will give you a 48 megapixel image. This is the 8K mode that they speak about in the marketing materials. And I will also say that the 8K photo mode or the 48 megapixel images are actually probably the best images that you can get out of this drone, but I'll explain that a little bit later when I go through some of the images. Another thing to mention is the ISO range has been extended to 25,600, and without being too technical, it's just how well that sensor is going to perform in lower light situations. Which is also doubled down by the improved aperture, going from an f2.2 lens to an f1.8, which basically means there's more light hitting that sensor through the lens of the camera. Now, while we're on the subject of low light, there is an AI feature called AI Night, which to me it looks like just a bit of an auto feature for the ISO. Now the ISO has improved, so there is going to be a better performance coming out of lower light situations. Now, although I'm not shooting at night, because technically I'm not allowed to, what we are going to look at is the AI Night feature for the really dark areas of this image. And first thing you'll notice is the screen that's on my phone actually looks a lot brighter than it does in the actual video. Now this is definitely not how I would edit an image, but let's just open up those shadows and give this image a little bit more exposure just so we can see how much detail is retained in those shaded areas. Now, if we compare this to just a regular video using the same settings but without the AI night feature, you can see there's a fair bit of difference. There's a whole bunch more noise, there's a whole bunch less detail, and there's some weird funky colors going on in the image. And so when we put them both side by side, we can actually see the difference by looking in the shadows. I want you to focus on the area right deep in the back where the structure is behind the pool. You can really see the difference in both videos. Now, all of this should be easy enough for you to do manually without using the AI night feature, but if you love shooting auto, this is probably going to be a really good friend to use when you just want to get a quick shot in a lower light situation. Now, it's only been a relatively short period of time that I've been able to test this drone, but from what I've seen comparatively to the original version, I'm very impressed with how the video and the photo quality is stacking up. And so in saying that, let's have a look at some of the improvements they've made from a video perspective. And if we pop the video specs on the screen, you'll see there's a whole bunch of new and improved video resolutions to have a look at. Now you can just pause the screen here and have a look through each of them. Now you can see they've added a whole bunch of new resolutions, including slow motion, vertical shooting, and a whole bunch of different variable resolutions in there. For me, the 4K 30 mode is still the best mode to shoot in. Now for some people, they're going to love the vertical mode because then you can just post straight to social media. But for me personally, I wouldn't even bother shooting in vertical mode because it's essentially just a landscape image that they've just cropped in on. So I would rather do that myself and choose what type of cropping that I want to do. But the biggest difference I think here is the improved bitrate. Now the bitrate means how much data they're packing into the video, and you can see they've almost doubled the amount of bitrate that is coming through into these video files, which means a better image. I would have loved to have seen it be over 100 megabits per second, and I know this will increase the file sizes, but moving from 50 to 80 is a good start. Now looking at the slow motion, it's a mode I probably wouldn't recommend, only because the image is quite soft and it is only a HD image. There's no 4K slow motion, which is understandable at this price point. Now, in saying that, if you do need the slow motion, it's better than nothing. And cycling between the modes, between a 2x slow motion all the way through to 5x slow motion, I didn't really notice a difference between them. Now, with all these slow motion videos, I've enhanced them to 200% just so they fit a 4K timeline. But here's a look at the native video in its HD form compared to a 4K image. Now, one of the more interesting video modes is the 2.7K mode, which is a 4:3 video, which basically means it hasn't been cropped at the top or the bottom. It's using more of the sensor, so you're actually getting a little bit more bang for your buck on the 2.7K mode. And I'll just overlay the 4K so you can see where the difference is. You can see that there's a whole bunch more room at the top and bottom, which is being included. And because it's using more of the sensor, this is also the same mode that they use for the vertical shooting. You can see here on the screen where it just basically just crops in the sides and gives you that vertical mode. I'd love to see them do it the same way DJI does it and where the gimbal actually rotates, so you get all the same shooting modes as shooting horizontally. Now, I consider this to be a cheap drone, but when I say cheap, I don't mean low quality. Instead, how about we call it value packed? I said with the last review of the Potensic Atom that I think this is one of the best value beginner drones on the market. And so we want to see where the second iteration stands up against that and also other drones. Now, because it is the second version, it's nice to have something to compare to this time also. And in general, Potensic has once again done a solid job when it comes to the look and feel. So let's have a look at what type of value you get with the Fly More pack. And the first thing I notice is the bag seems a little bit bigger. It's still the same beautiful, amazing quality, and it's still able to carry everything you need inside it. However, things just fit better. I leave the cord in so I don't forget about it, and I also leave these things screwed in as well. The bag seems big enough that it can actually hold them in there without any of those things getting damaged, which in turn makes the setup much faster. The battery charging hub is amazing. Unlike other brands, all 3 batteries charge at the same time instead of one after the other. It's also incredible of Potensic to use the exact same battery and charging hub as the previous. So if you've got the previous version, those batteries will also work with this one too. Now you can charge each individual battery with a USB-C, but you can't charge the hub with a USB-C. So that's something I'd love to see improved for the next version. Now, there are no safety sensors on this drone, so if this is your first drone, you may crash it once or twice, but at least there's a whole bunch of spare props to get you through. It also has all the usual suspects when it comes to connecting your phone or tablet, but the biggest improvement when it comes to hardware is definitely the controller. While I was critical of the last controller being a little on the larger size, this one is even bigger, and I don't hate it. In fact, it's a big improvement. The underside features a much improved handle and a grippy rubber surface, while all the buttons have been improved and it just feels a lot more premium. When we compare it to the previous model, you can see that it extends from both sides instead of the one, and the aerials have been improved from two flimsy looking ones to one single one that's definitely not going to get broken anytime soon. When it comes to the drone body itself, it's still wrapped in that amazing Velcro strap which I've always loved, but everything else looks pretty much similar, apart from the previously mentioned camera upgrade, which you can't really tell. The only real difference I can see is the props have a nice little orange wingtip to them, and the Potensic logo has changed from a word to just the letter P. And when we put the controller next to the drone, you can actually see the size difference. There's also a noticeable color difference between the drone and the remote, which definitely doesn't make a difference to anything, but it's just interesting to note. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the build quality and the value you get out of the Fly More pack. There's been some really nice improvements, which I think most people will love. When it comes to quickshot modes, it has all the usual suspects: pull away, rocket, circle, spiral, and boomerang. Now, all of these quick shots don't record this quickly. I've just sped them up for the sake of time because each video records for about 15 to 40 seconds and I don't want you to sit through all of that. And it's also now called AI quick shots because everything sounds fancier when you call it AI. Now, there is one more quick shot that's new to the party, and that's called dolly zoom, which is basically a digital zoom in while the drone is moving backwards, which gives a unique perspective made famous from movies like Jaws. Now, because it is a digital zoom in, the quality gets progressively worse, which I guess is fine because it's more novelty than anything else. Now, for this example, I'm not using the dolly zoom quick shot for a reason I'll tell you in a second. I'm actually doing it manually, but you can see all I'm doing is flying backwards and then zooming in. And then this is how far I've actually cropped in from. So you can see why there's a difference in quality because you're basically zooming in on a much larger image. Now, to access the AI quick shots, it's super simple. There's nothing in the menu to find it. You basically just draw a box around the subject to activate the modes, and then you select the quick shot that you want from there. And it's also nice because they add this little video in there to just show you what that quick shot will look like. And then all you need to do is just hit go and it will just count down from there.
2, 1, go.
The only issue I found was if you try to maneuver while a quick shot is recording, it'll stop. Otherwise, for the most part, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. I've just bumped the stick and it just completely shuts off the quick shot altogether. The AI track modes, however, are what I'd use the most. But what I found to be somewhat limiting was you could only start tracking when the gimbal is between -25 and -75 degrees, which I assume is for safety reasons. However, because I'm on a slightly slopey terrain, I wanted to start tracking me walking with the ocean in the background. But now I'm just limited to just me and the boring grass. My only solution was to fly further back, but even then it wasn't quite enough. When it finally allows you to track, it does a pretty good job. And again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to speed this up, but what I want you to watch is how well it keeps me in those crosshairs. Here's me trying to hide out of frame to see if it'll pick me up again. Even though I pop up inside the search box, you can only see my head and shoulders and it doesn't start tracking again. And when it does lose you, the only way to get it back is to redraw that box around yourself. And unlike the quick shots, when you're in the AI track, you can actually maneuver the drone and it will still continue to track you, which is really nice. And much like the AI quick shots, the AI track not only requires the gimbal at the right angle, but also from a certain height too. And that height being 4 meters above the ground. Now I'm downhill from where the drone took flight. Even though the altitude says I'm only 0.8 meters high, I'm actually much higher because of the slope. And again, my only way of fixing this is to maneuver the drone to meet those certain requirements. I guess as there are no sensors, this is just all a safety feature. However, I'd love to see an option to bypass this. Even if it's just a warning on the screen, something like you're tracking at a very low level and chances of crashing are much higher. Do you want to proceed? That would be nice. Now, even though I might sound pretty critical of this tracking and the quick shots feature, I actually really do like all of them. I think they do a really good job, and especially when we look across the market of drones, I think this is on par with pretty much most drones out there. So I can't really fault it too much. I love how drones offer different speed settings. The speed settings for the Atom 2 are located in the safety tab. It offers 3 different settings: video, normal, and sport. Normal and sport make a lot of sense to me. But surely there is a better name than video for a speed setting. But I digress. Let's just have a look at the comparison between video and sport settings. Here's an idea of how quick this thing can go. The left side is video setting and the right side is sport mode, which absolutely crushes the speed on the left. And a helpful hand of advice, the faster you go doesn't always mean the better shot. Sometimes a slow and deliberate move is going to be your most cinematic. The horizontal speed maxes out at 16 meters per second, which is the same as the previous Atom 1, and battery times are listed at 32 minutes in perfect conditions. I'd say real world use is probably around the 20-minute mark, which is solid enough. Now, I did say earlier that the 8K photos are probably the best option when it comes to taking photos, and here's why. I've got two photos here, the left photo being an 8K and the right photo just a regular JPEG. I've zoomed in 300% just so we can see more detail. You can see the photo in the top left is the actual image. Now I'm hoping YouTube doesn't compress this too much, but for me you can definitely see the 4:1 pixels or the 8K giving a much sharper, cleaner textures in the rocks than the JPEG. And it's the same story when we put the 8K versus a regular RAW file. It's just a much sharper, cleaner shot. The raw DNG files, however, will also retain more data, so editing will be a little bit easier in the RAWs than it will be for the 8K. So if you don't edit your photos much, I would definitely recommend shooting in 8K. But if you're used to editing your photos in things like Lightroom or something else like that, then I would probably recommend that you still stick to shooting in RAW. And speaking of RAWs, here's one I prepared earlier. So if we look at the before, that's the before and that's the after. In terms of the detail when we zoom in, it's pretty good. Like there's definitely enough data in there that you can manipulate some colors to get them to a space where you think is nice and comfortable. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the photos. There's definitely a little bump in quality, which I appreciate. But getting back into the video, there was a feature that made me really excited. It was the announcement of a log profile. Now, if you're not sure what log is, it basically looks something like this. Now, if you've never seen something like this before, you'd think, why would anyone want to shoot something like this? It's all washed out, doesn't make any sense. But the whole idea, without getting too scientific on you, of shooting in log, it preserves all of your shadows and your highlights, and it gives you much more room to edit in post. And that type of flexibility allows you to make your footage look super cinematic and professional. Now, Potensic have told me that that is going to be released in a firmware update somewhere later this year, so I'm really excited to see that come through. In the meantime, I've created a whole bunch of LUTs or filters which you can also use in your footage to get the most out of your Potensic Atom 2. So if you want to check those out, I've left the link in the description so you can have a look. Now, is it a pro level quality drone? Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I will say this is a massive step in the right direction for Potensic and the Atom series. There is definitely a lot to love in the new features, in the new software that they've created. They really are trying their best to capture a really huge section of this beginner drone market with a really quality offering. And do I recommend this drone? I think if you're in the market for a beginner drone, I would have to say yes. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs up as well. But that's all from me. It's time for you to go. Get out of here.